Well, good evening. This is Congressman Nick Langworthy, and I want to thank you for joining me tonight for what's the 23rd telephone town hall meeting that I have held monthly since I have taken office. I hope some of you by now have been able to join me for this monthly telephone town hall series where I call the residents of New York's 23rd Congressional District to give you an update on what's going on in Washington and to hear directly from you about what's on your mind. But for those of you who are new to this program, welcome. And before we get started, if you have a question, press *3 at any time to get into the queue so we can hopefully get to as many questions as possible tonight. Again, press *3 on your phone if you'd like to get in line to ask a question. This is an incredible busy time, and I'm sure we will have a lot of questions, and we're going to get to as many as we possibly can. Earlier this month, President Trump took a bold step to try to restore fairness in our trade practices with other countries. There is no doubt that for the past several decades, American workers, our farmers, our manufacturers have been harmed by unfair and unbalanced tariffs. Now, starting with NAFTA in the 90s, far too many American industries have been hollowed out in a race to globalize our economy. Nowhere has been hit harder than Western New York and the Southern Tier by the gluttony of free trade agreements that were really abusive to American manufacturing. And we've seen the results firsthand. We've lost those manufacturing jobs. We've lost entire industries that so many of our communities in the Southern Tier had. And I saw it firsthand in our own backyards as families were torn apart watching auto manufacturing jobs move overseas. That once reliable paycheck that allowed you to live a simple but fulfilling life raising your family turned into an era of despair for millions of American workers. And decades later, we saw a new wave of consequences of globalization when COVID shattered our economy and our supply chain because we no longer manufactured a lot of the PPE and critical equipment that we needed in our country. Our exporters face higher tariffs over 2/3 of the time in 132 different countries in across 600,000 product lines. China's tariffs are 341 times higher than the United States, and India's are 50% higher, costing U.S. businesses billions of dollars annually. I believe our country is at an inflection point, and we must learn lessons from the mistakes of the past. Our Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, said, "It's like being on steroids. From the outside, you look great, but on the inside, your vital organs are dying." And we have lost industries, and we're getting taken advantage of on a regular basis. The trillions of dollars that were printed in the Biden years created an economy that was artificially propped up by the federal government. We're facing more than $36 trillion in debt, and if we don't rein in our spending and strengthen our economy, we will soon find ourselves in an irreversible financial cliff. American businesses, they deserve a fair shot at competing in the global marketplace. And we must use our economic strength and our might to force these countries to the table to negotiate fairer trade deals. It is rare that any leader has put their popularity on the line in an attempt to deliver transformational change, but we've seen that. And the president has acknowledged there's going to be some short-term pain in this process. It is never easy to break up the status quo. But ladies and gentlemen, the party's over. And the United States is going to allow every other country to take advantage of our customers. And our same businesses aren't afforded the opportunities in those countries. That time is done. But the president has created a good economy in the past, and he has a proven track record of delivering results for American workers. And this is about American workers. We're putting workers first for the first time in a long time in this country. President Trump has announced that there are nearly 75 countries that have come to the negotiating table with the United States to find solutions to work towards free and fair trade agreements, a feat that would never have been accomplished without playing hardball with the nations of the world. And now the White House is reporting that they have 18 deals, pen and paper, ready to go. This is great news. This means that negotiations are working and markets are responding positively. For these countries who are negotiating in good faith, he's now given a 90-day pause on tariffs. As for China, They have unfortunately retaliated against President Trump's tariffs, and as of right now, President Trump has announced that he has raised the tariff on China. This announcement puts China on notice. I believe that the tariff increase is an appropriate response to prove that the days of them undermining America are over. They cheat at every level. They steal our intellectual property. They send their products to other countries to mask the country of origin. There's really no rules that they haven't bent or broken, and it is time that we put them on notice. There's going to be some discomfort along the way, but today shows that the president's tactics are working. And I trust that the long-term strategy to level the trade playing field will deliver, while we're delivering historic tax cuts, extending the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, lowering our energy costs by exploring more American energy and bringing investments back to the United States. It will pay huge dividends and bring our economy roaring into the next decade. I am very closely monitoring how these changes are impacting our nation and our region. But while the stock market is going to fluctuate day to day, we must look at the bigger picture for the long-term indicators of our economic health as a country. I was extremely encouraged that earlier this month the March jobs report blew past expectations with more than 228,000 new jobs added to the economy. And we've also seen record investments in the U.S. being announced, including companies like Apple bringing $500 billion in investment into the United States. Stellantis moving manufacturing plants here from Canada, a $500 billion investment in an AI infrastructure project, and the list goes on and on and on. Changing America's trajectory means that we cannot continue with the same policies that have driven American jobs overseas and taken wealth out of our country. While the president is using tariffs as one tool in the toolbox to prioritize American workers, House Republicans are working closely with the administration to ensure that our entire economic agenda, from tax cuts to strengthening our supply chain, is implemented. We are already seeing results with inflation cooling, gas prices dropping, and these historic investments from overseas. Please know that ensuring America remains strong and free for the next generation is why I step forward to serve in Congress, and I will always fight to put American workers and our Southern Tier and Western New York families first. So I want to take a moment to remind you that have just joined the call to press *3 if you would like to ask a question, and we will get you in the queue, and we'll get to questions in just a second. We will get right to that. The House of Representatives has also been focused on the budget process in our work to pass and extend the tax code. We are going through a process called budget reconciliation, which allows the Senate and the House to work together to expedite the process. The Senate amended the House's budget resolution from the last month and sent it back, and then on April 10th, the House passed this resolution by a vote of 216 to 214. Just as I did at our town hall meeting last month, it is important to highlight again that this bill provides a blueprint for delivering historic savings of taxpayer dollars. It eliminates waste, fraud, and abuse while protecting essential programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security for those that truly need it and it's truly intended for. Again, the resolution that passed earlier this month does not contain any specific cuts to any program. It simply establishes a top-line number and cuts that each committee must reach. Now that the House has cleared these hurdles, the House committees will get to work developing actual legislation that aligns with the goals of the budget resolution to provide critical tax policy for working and middle-class Americans, spurring job growth, and reducing our deficit. But the Democrats and Senator Schumer were once again resorting to shameless fear-mongering because their extreme agenda has been overwhelmingly rejected by the American people. President Trump and our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, have made it crystal clear there will be no cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security benefits. But we will root out waste, fraud, and abuse that threatens the survival of these critical programs. If Senator Schumer really cared about seniors, he'd be fighting for the billions lost every year to fraudsters, not spreading lies to score cheap political points and scare seniors. You deserve the truth, not scare tactics. We are months away from the debt limit, which we come up across every few years. The border security resources are being diminished. Companies are watching to see if they should invest and hire, and the largest tax increase in American history will hit if we do nothing and not extend the current tax code after the 31st of December of this year. And if we don't act now, there will be consequences. If the 2017 Trump Tax Cut and Jobs Act are not extended, the average taxpayer would see a 22% tax increase. 40 million families will see their child tax credit cut in half. This means about $1,600 to $1,700 a month for families in Western New York and the Southern Tier. And while those on the left say that that's peanuts, that's multiple mortgage payments for a lot of constituents in this district. Americans spent 4 years suffering under record inflation, crushing energy prices, and a stalled job market. We need to move full steam ahead to get this economy roaring back to life, and we're going to do just that. And starting next week, when we get back into session in Washington, each House committee will begin to mark up legislation in line with the budget resolution and deliver for the American people. So these are just a few of the things I wanted to highlight, but I also want to remind you that our office is always there to help you navigate the federal government. My office motto is very simple. No problem is too big and no problem is too small. If you need help with Social Security, veterans benefits, your passport application, no matter what it is, my team can help you cut through the red tape. Since just the start of the year, we've helped more than 495 constituents with federal agency issues and questions. My office has corresponded with more than 32,000 constituents on a wide range of issues, spanning from veteran services to securing our border to protecting Social Security. And I know there's people out there that have a lot of strong opinions right now. It's a politically divisive time. The volume gets turned up, and some of you call the office every single day. And you know what? That's your First Amendment right. We hear you, and we respond to those constituents, even if they don't agree with my position. I appreciate your right to be heard, and you are heard. Doesn't mean that I am going to change my position. I've kept the same positions from the time I ran for Congress in 2022, all through the last term while Joe Biden was president, and I stand for the same values and issues now, and those I believe are the values of the majority of the people of the 23rd Congressional District. So now we're going to go into the Q&A. We're going to start with Jean. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, is this Jean?
This is Jeannie, yes. Thank you for taking my call.
Hi, Jeannie. Absolutely. Where are you calling in from tonight?
Fredonia, New York.
Fredonia? Well, welcome to the call. What's on your mind?
You may have heard that 2,000 correctional officers were fired. I was one of them, illegally. And I have gone through many different people for information, for help, and it just seems it's just not going anywhere. And I'm to the point where I've done what I was supposed to do. My rights, both morally and federally, have been violated, and nobody's being held accountable. I handed in FMLA paperwork, and I had medical documentation with a return to work date. I handed those in. I was told by the medical officer, we're good. I'm like, I'll see you Wednesday. See you Wednesday. Thank you. Came in on Wednesday, full uniform, prepared, ready to work as usual, my long hours. And I was told I was terminated, and that was it. Turn around and please leave.
Well, I'm very sorry that this has happened to you. I would like to open some federal casework for you. If you were on, FMLA, we should look into that with you. I mean, just my position on the strike. I mean, I stood with the corrections officers.
I know you did.
I think it was just intolerable, the conditions that you had to endure. I knew many corrections officers that were out on the picket lines, and the mass firing is just wrong. And I strongly disagree with the governor's actions. I think it's very cowardly to do this, especially when it was her laws that led to the poor working conditions. No other union in the state of New York would be treated the way the corrections officers were. But I'd like my staff kind of privately to go through this with you to see if there's any avenue that we can, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I have been, I was working with Sean O'Neill, and I gave him documentation that turned up his nose, and he's like, I need to turn this in right away. Being that it was from Albany itself, who does all the paperwork there, sent out an email, which we all have a copy of it now, stating that if anybody called in, whether it be FMLA, whether it be sick, bereavement, or anything else, you're to AWOL them. It's in writing. It's from them, and all the superintendents got it.
They have, I think, violated federal laws here, and we have asked for an investigation from the Federal Department of Labor, from our new labor secretary, who was just confirmed to jump in here and investigate this situation, because I just have never seen, especially on the municipal level, a union treated this way by management. And I believe they've violated federal laws here. I want to be an advocate for you, and it's probably more appropriate if we talk offline on this, and we will do that. We're getting your phone number, and I will be happy to give you a call when this is over, okay?
I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
But I really think that union.
Okay. We are next going to go to Susan.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Susan. Yes. Where are you calling from tonight, Susan?
I'm from Elmira.
Oh, okay. Welcome to the call. What's on your mind?
Thank you. I am very concerned that we have a Supreme Court decision compelling President Trump to facilitate the return of Mr. Garcia from El Salvador so that he can go through his process rights to be either found guilty of what they have accused him of or innocent. And I am wondering what your position is on that, because I would hope as an elected official that you are interested in upholding the rule of law.
Well, I think you're speaking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Correct.
Yes, he was illegally residing in the United States, and he was deported to Venezuela last month. I mean, this was not an upstanding citizen that those that want you to think he is. I mean, he is someone that has a history of domestic violence, a member of the violent MS-13 gang. His own wife sought a domestic violence restraining order against him, claiming that he punched and scratched and ripped her shirt. This is in addition to in 2020 when he hit her with his work boot, and another time when he hit her in the eye, leaving her with a black eye. I mean, the Prince George's County Police Department gang unit intelligence squad conducted an interview with him and contacted him as a past proven and reliable source who identified him as an active member of MS-13, which has been deemed a terrorist organization. So I think he was a member of an active terrorist organization that by the president's executive order, made him subject to deportation. So that is, I'm quite surprised that some people are really going.
Wait, let me interrupt.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Because no one in the federal government, in President Trump's realm, and understand, all I'm interested in is that due process is followed, because we have a pattern here with what's going on in the Trump administration of not recognizing due process. So I know that the Trump administration has been asked on multiple occasions to produce documentation of everything that you have just, in fact, gone down the laundry list for, and they have been unable and or unwilling to do that. So I understand your position, but I think that you need to understand the position of the American people, which is we are in a serious situation where our democracy, the rule of law, and the provisions of the Constitution are being violated by the Trump administration daily. And it would be my hope that your allegiance as an elected official, you were not elected by Mr. Trump. You were
No, I was elected by the citizens of this district, not a citizen of Venezuela who's a member of a gang.
I would hope that your position would be that you are committed to upholding the rule of law and to due process, regardless, and not bend the knee to Mr. Trump. That's
I haven't bent a knee to anyone. Was this made in the country illegally? Yes or no?
We don't know that, and neither do you, because Mr. Trump has not produced the documentation to the American people or to the courts.
Well, he broke the laws of this country by coming here illegally, first and foremost. He's a member of a criminal gang.
No, there's no proof of that, but I'm not going to argue that with you. I understand your position now. I have one more question for you, or one more statement.
Okay. Sure.
As an elected official, a member of Congress, you have the fiduciary responsibility for expenditures in the United States. I would like you to produce an accurate accounting, because you should have this, of any fraud and or theft that has been identified by DOJ and who has been charged with and prosecuted for those. Because as a former federal employee who has gone through many OIG investigations and audits, tell you that if anybody stole, frauded, or misused monies in the federal government, we would know it by now, and they would be prosecuted. So I think that you, who has a fiduciary responsibility, owe it to your constituents to be able to provide an accurate accounting of where the fraud was identified, for how much, and in what department. And I'm asking you for that.
Okay, I hear what you're saying here. DOJ has found wasteful spending. I don't think people are saying that. I'm not accusing someone of stealing money. I'm saying that money was being used by agencies in ways that were not transparent to the Congress, weren't transparent to the American people. I mean, look at the USAID expenditures. Look at the USAID expenditures. And if you think that those are something you can hold up high, the things that our federal government decided under the nose of Congress and under the nose of the American people are something you're proud of. The fact that we're spending money on transgender surgeries in foreign countries, we're doing non-binary gender education in Honduras. I mean, these sorts of things are being done with your tax dollars. Do you think we should go into debt for things like that? I mean, when I was asked, when I voted on an amendment. Well, no, you wait a minute, because I'm talking. I didn't interrupt you. I did not interrupt you. I did not interrupt you. Okay. So, and then I'll let you rebut. But when I was asked in an amendment to vote to cut that budget in half, I did not, because I thought that here's an agency that is tasked with providing medicine and aid and humanitarian supplies to people around the globe that are truly in need. And I thought that would be a really callous thing to cut that budget in half. And then what we found once DOJ started doing the digging was disgusting. I mean, the fact that USAID is being abused in this way is just flabbergasting to me. And if I'm sorry if you don't like that, but I think that is the poster child for the waste of the federal government. And I'm glad that department has been absorbed into the State Department so that we can actually deliver what the agency's intended purpose was, to provide medicine and food and humanitarian aid to those countries where we need to provide that compassionate care, not social engineer around the globe. And that's what we have found, and that's what DOJ has found. I mean, this is an audit of the entire federal government. How many employees do we really need? I'm not pointing fingers at people individually, but if we have office space that we're not using, we shouldn't have it. And there's many, many examples of that, and those leases get canceled. So we aren't spending needlessly the precious tax dollars of the American people. And every department should hold their budget up high and be proud of what they spent their money on, because they're doing good work for the American taxpayer. So this isn't about vilifying people. It's about making sure we're not hiring people that we don't need for intentions. I mean, we saw during the DEI period in the last 4 years where there's entire sub-agencies devoted to DEI. It doesn't help the taxpayer. All it is social engineering. And that's what we have a huge element of throughout the federal government, and it's baked in and it's being pulled out now. So we can get back to the core functions of government, and we have a duty to spend the taxpayers' money wisely, not through social engineering experiments.
I have no problem with spending taxpayer monies wisely, and I'm not here to debate which programs are appropriate or which programs are not appropriate. I will tell you that there were no audits done by DOJ. It was just taking a hacksaw to every program that he went through. A forensic audit doesn't happen in 24 hours, number one. And number two, if it's wasteful spending, I agree that we should not be spending money on needless programs or services, particularly in foreign countries or in the United States. But the Trump administration has alleged that there is fraud going on. If there is fraud going on in the federal government, I want to know what it is. And I think that you have a fiduciary responsibility to your constituents to tell us just how much money really has been identified as fraudulent expenditures within the federal government. That's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
But
I've made no allegations of fraud. I think there is waste, and we're here rooting out waste. So I don't know that there's fraud. I haven't had fraud delivered to me, but if we have more employees than we need, we're right-sizing government. And the president ran on this, and he's executing it. But we have a lot of callers tonight. I appreciate your opinions. I appreciate our differences of opinions, and thank you for calling. Our next caller is Nancy. Hi, Nance. Is it Nance or Nancy?
Either or.
Okay. Well, thank you for being with us. Where are you calling from tonight?
Fredonia, New York.
Okay. Well, we got two already from Fredonia. Thank you for being with us. What's on your mind?
Well, I have two things that I wanted to discuss. The first one is being in Fredonia, Chautauqua County. We are close by the Canadian border, and
sure are.
a lot of tourists, Canadians come down and they spend their tourist money, and a lot of them have condos in Ellicottville and other locations. And with the way that President Trump is talking about annexing Canada as our 51st state, you can imagine how the Canadians feel. And I think I don't know what your stand is on this or what you can do, but I think those statements need to be stopped. I mean, it's ridiculous. Well, it's a sovereign country, for God's sakes.
Sure. I do think the president's ratcheted down some of the rhetoric there. I don't think that was the most helpful thing. I believe Canada is a valued ally. I'm on the Interparliamentary Council between our two countries. I obviously have lived in Western New York in the Southern Tier my entire life. I spend a fair amount of time in Canada. You know, we took a little trip with our kids last year to Canada. It's a beautiful country, and they're great allies. We're having a disagreement about trade right now. I think we'll iron that out when that election happens in Canada. Let's face it, neither candidate for prime minister can afford to be seen as surrendering. They want this over faster than we want this over. I think we can get to an equitable solution once they have their election. And whoever the prime minister is going to be, who we're going to be dealing with, I believe they'll, in pretty short order, be willing to work out a trade deal that works on both sides, and that's my significant hope. In terms of the 51st state, I take Canada at their word. they don't want to be the 51st state, and
No.
that's that. They're not going to be the 51st state, and they're a proud, independent country. We have, as you said, a lot of in Western New York. We have a lot of Canadians that come and they spend their money. There's many that have second homes in Ellicottville and in Chautauqua, and I admire them. I think they play an important role in our community, and I have a lot of respect for the Canadian people. And but I don't believe they're going to be.
Stop about that. I mean, if somebody would say that about we're going to annex New York State to Canada, we would be furious about it. How could you do that? That's you have to be able to control that somehow. I mean,
well, I think they're going through their election, and we are, I think we're going to get a deal done and get a hard reset when there's a newly elected prime minister. I think the president has ratcheted down a lot of that, and he had a significant personality conflict with the former prime minister, and he's gone now. So hopefully with the new prime minister coming in, we will have a better relationship, and we can get it to a long-lasting trade deal that I hope is a bilateral trade deal. I don't want to see us do anything that's like U.S., Canada, and Mexico. I want us to see just our deal with Canada and not mix the three countries, because Mexico has a much different standard of living than the United States. They obviously, don't have the same labor laws and labor costs, and Canada is much more like the United States. I think we should have a trade deal that is just between our two nations, and then we can deal with Mexico on a separate basis. Is my hope, but personally, I don't believe they should be the 51st state, and I don't believe that they ever will. So, right. I appreciate you calling in tonight, Nancy, and thank you for being with us. And next, we are going to go to Penny.
Much, Congressman Langworthy,
hi, Penny.
for finally getting. Yes, hi. Thanks very much for finally getting this together for us. I'd like to focus on your committee, the House Energy and Commerce, and the huge challenge that you're going to have to find what I think it's $880 billion in cuts. So we've heard that Medicare is off the table. We've also heard that Medicaid is off the table, although there is some suggestion that those states that have extension programs, such as we have here in New York, may see that funding dropped as a way to come up with this savings. So you can imagine if that happens, we in New York are going to have increased taxes with already our significant tax burden. I want to put that against the goal of extending tax cuts. And the fundamental question I have is, do we need, should people that make $1 million or $5 million or $10 million and above, should they not have any additional taxes taken out versus what the goal is, the challenges in coming up with, $1.5 trillion?
Well, what we have is the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, which was really the fairest tax code that we've had in generations. It made us competitive across the globe. It brought a lot of money back to the United States that companies had parked overseas. Those same companies that took our jobs overseas were hiding their money overseas while they were making all their money in the United States. The Tax Cut and Jobs Act also doubled the standard deduction, which put money in people in this community's pocket. It doubled the child tax credit, which put money in families' pockets. My goal is to get as much money back into the pockets of our constituents as possible. It's really, anytime you end up having a tax debate, you have people that want to cry about millionaires and billionaires. Ultimately, the people that pay most of the tax burden in this country are in the very upper percentages. I mean, there's 48% of Americans that don't have any federal tax obligation. In fact, they get a distribution through an earned income tax credit if they have none, and they get money that they didn't pay in. That continues under this. We're not talking about new tax cuts. We're talking about extending the current tax code into the future. And that is something that the economy is sitting there with bated breath and waiting to see if that's going to happen. If we levy new taxes on the job creators and businesses just because we arbitrarily want to get into this eat the rich mentality, it's going to affect job creation. It's going to affect reinvestment into the economy, reinvestment into businesses, the creation of jobs, and that's why we're at this period of anxiousness in the economy, because there are people that are concerned that the tax code is going to go away and there's going to be a large tax increase on most Americans. It will have a large increase on the people in our community. If you have your child tax credit cut in half, that's money out of your pocket. If you get rid of doubling the standard deduction, you're going to have a tax increase in the year ahead. And we have 26 million small businesses that would be hit with the top tax rate increase in going up to 43%, over 43%. I mean, there's projections that that's going to lead to 6 million jobs lost. I mean, that is what is on the line.
Yeah, I'm not proposing that we don't extend it. I'm just asking, where are you going to find $880 billion?
Well, you got to realize that our committee is not just charged with dealing with healthcare policy. It is charged with all of energy policy, all of telecommunications policy, and healthcare. It's 70% of the U.S. economy flows through our committee, and there will be healthcare related expenditures, improving programs, eliminating fraud and waste and abuse in the system, making sure we have verifications in place so people that these programs are actually intended to help will actually be the ones getting those benefits, not the double dippers that we have around in February, the state controller, Thomas DiNapoli, he revealed that a state audit uncovered $16 million in improper Medicaid payments by the state. That's just in one audit. In this report, this Democratic state controller even called for a need to improve the process of Medicaid claims in New York. Our state spends more on this program than California and Texas combined. Our state's Medicaid system is wildly broken. And Obamacare broke Medicaid. Medicaid was designed to protect pregnant women, children, the people under 100% of the poverty line, and our poor seniors. And it has become a catch-all for people they couldn't get to buy policies in the expansion population. I am an advocate for the Medicaid program. I know how much people in our district depend on it. We have a very poor district by national standards, and we need to improve the program so they're there for the people that need the help the most. The Biden administration, it allowed states waivers to spend federal Medicaid dollars on non-medical purposes. This includes, a lot of social engineering, and those sorts of things need to be rooted out of these programs and these line items. So we will find savings within the program without affecting the fact that people that go to a hospital need to be taken care of. Our rural hospitals are very dependent on Medicaid, and it's not just in Western New York. It's across the country. Our rural hospitals are in serious financial danger. We can't afford to jeopardize them, and I will be working hard to make sure that those safeguards are put in place for our rural hospitals. We work with the hospitals every single week and have been communicating with them through this entire process. Now that we get into specifics, we'll be working with them to see what changes could be, accepted without severely impacting their financial health and well-being. I'm deeply worried about our healthcare delivery system. So we will, continue to find those. I mean, but when you look at our energy policies, there's going to be revenue created through the budget reconciliation process that eats into that 880 number. There's going to be the sale of spectrum, the airwaves that the federal government controls, that our telecommunications companies desperately want to buy more of. That will create revenue that will work down that 880 billion. So it is not solely on the back of one healthcare program, but it's the thing that the professional left gets people the most wound up about, because they want to tell the story that Republicans are hurting people. It's not the case. The president's been crystal clear. He's not going to cut Medicaid benefits. The Speaker of the House has said we're not going to cut Medicaid benefits, and I am going to be working day and night to make sure we're not cutting Medicaid benefits. But thank you very much for being with us tonight, Penny. We are on to our next caller, which is Thomas. Hi, Thomas.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. What's on your mind tonight? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Elmira.
Okay, thanks for being with us.
Yep. Yeah, it's like my first town hall, so I was just kind of listening to the first caller, which brought me to mind of, they were talking about the tariffs, which brought me to mind of something I've been talking about for years and years and years, because this is nothing new. With these countries, they're, these companies that are going to these countries that don't have the same labor laws as us. And my thing is, how can we do business with these countries that don't have the same labor laws as us? And then, well, I've been sitting here thinking about it. It's like, why don't we punish these companies who leave this country to go circumvent our labor laws? Because they know we have labor laws in place. And why don't we, since we're all talking about going down to Venezuela and protecting this Garcia's rights, what about the rights of these little kids that are in sweatshops, or these people who are only working for minimal amounts of dollars a day or whatever, because, we can tariff, but how do we prevent this from the future,
Well,
and,
Tom, you make a lot of good points. I mean, and that's what, all these free trade agreements that we got into, starting with NAFTA, but then when we gave permanent normal trade relationships to China, we ended up looking the other way on human rights and accepting the fact that we can export entire industries that we had in this country. I mean, try finding an American T-shirt. I mean, we used to make great textiles in this country, and now we don't, because they can pay someone 50 cents an hour or less somewhere in the Far East, or in it was in Mexico. It's not even Mexico anymore. It's now some the smaller Central American countries where so many of our goods are manufactured, because to drive in an effort to drive down the cost and increase the profit, labor be damned. They don't have a respect for labor in those countries. They don't have a respect for workers, and we need to keep that in mind with our purchases. I mean, we should try to buy American whenever. We should be proud to buy American, because there's an American worker on the other side, in an American paycheck, and an American family that's taken care of every time we buy American. And the race to the bottom on price has led us to this period in time where we found during COVID we were so flat-footed, couldn't get masks, couldn't get gowns, couldn't get anything, because we don't make any of it anymore. There was one mask manufacturer left in America, in Texas, that did medical masks when COVID set in. I mean, talk about letting your supply chain go to hell, all in the name of driving down the cost, because we're willing to accept countries that have slave labor prices. And it's not always the popular decision to buy American. It may cost a few more bucks, but at the end of the day, it's a hell of a lot safer for us to have industries in the United States and not be dependent on foreign countries. I mean, it leads me to when we had that period where the supply chain in the auto industry, where if you went to the local dealership and wanted a specific car, you might be waiting 9-10 months. Or you were just going to buy whatever they had on the lot, because they couldn't get the computer chips from the Far East. And now we're bringing that industry back. We develop all the technology, but we're bringing that back.
That to bring up the fact that if we lose one cargo ship coming in with our product, well, everybody goes into a tizzy. And then the one caller was talking about, she was all upset about making Canada a state. You know, I've been saying for years, they're lucky I'm not president, because why don't we try to make South America, Middle America, all that down there, if it's so bad down there that all those 15 billion people want to come up here, why don't we just go down there and take over their countries? And then we can
nobody's sneaking into Venezuela. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
And but you know, that's what American First policies are all about. Is to promote the American worker and making sure that we have manufacturing. Our district, the Southern Tier in Western New York has a long history of great manufacturing companies, and we've lost way too many of them. You know, because of a lot of this globalization and free trade, and we got sold out by a lot of people over the years. And it is ironic to me that the same people that call me and want to scream about the tariffs are the same people, in many cases, that are screaming about corporate profits all the time. This is about the workers, not about the big corporate robber barons. Yep. And we need to restore American industrial might in this country. We need to make things here again, and we need to have jobs for our people. And you know, you could do that every time you buy American. You help that cause. I really thank you for being with me tonight, Tom. And we're going to go on to our next caller, which is Shelby.
Langworthy.
Hi, Shelby. How are you?
I'm all right. Nice to finally speak with you.
Nice to speak with you. Where are you calling from tonight?
Horsehead.
Okay. Welcome to the call.
Thank you. I have several questions, but I will keep it brief. I know you have many callers. My first question is in relation to what Susan earlier asked about these tariffs and about the back and forth with President Trump. I know that quite a few people lost a lot of money in their 401ks, watched their retirements kind of take a hit. I'd really love to know how your stock portfolio did earlier this month, and I'd really like to know how other members of Congress did this month in theirs, because I'd really like to know if there's some insider trading going on within our federal government.
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about that. I don't trade stocks individually. I don't have any individual stock. My family doesn't trade stocks. I mean, that's something that
individually. Does that mean that?
No, I have an index fund. I have an index fund. My retirement account is a very basic one with just a generic S&P index fund. I file an annual report. Per the House rules, it's due on May 15th. We'll be just doing it here in a few weeks. But it's just a simple 401k with a few different options. And so I don't do any trading. I haven't done anything that is different. I, in fact, co-sponsor legislation that thinks members of Congress shouldn't trade stock. I don't think it's ethical. We've seen people on both sides of the aisle. I was disgusted when a Republican U.S. senator was accused of coming out of briefings. This is before I came to Congress. On what was coming with the lockdowns, and next they're buying Zoom and all these different stocks, and decisions within days, made those stocks explode. I think that is wrong. I don't think members of Congress should trade individual stocks. I think they should at minimum have to put their individual stock portfolios into blind trusts and not touch those. I can't speak to other members. I know that I have made it a practice to not trade stocks. I have just a simple 401k that goes into an S&P index fund, period. I don't, so I've lost money in the market just like everybody else. When it went down, and when it goes up, it goes up. Last year we all had great returns. This year, it's been a little flat with the volatility and the tariff discussion. When we get these new trade deals, I think it'll probably explode again. But I don't think members of Congress. I don't believe members of Congress should be allowed to trade, sit there and be day traders.
On that, we agree. So my real question is, I have some real concern about your vote on House Bill 22, the SAVE Act. I am one of the people who could be affected by that. There's 63 million American women who have taken their husband's last names, who now have to go either change their name back to their birth certificate name, or get a passport in order to exercise their right to vote. That is.
Are you registered to vote?
Yes, I am. I vote in every election.
It doesn't affect. Then it doesn't affect you one iota. It will not affect you one iota. If you're an existing registered voter, it doesn't affect.
That will be affected. Excuse me, please let me speak. It may not be an effect to me directly, but it may affect all of the people that I love who are trying to vote. And to say that this won't affect people is absolutely ridiculous. There have been provisions to make it allowable for women to bring in marriage licenses that have been shot down for this bill. I don't understand what you're afraid of, having women vote, but it's clear that you are. And it's clear to me that you're also a little afraid to speak to us in person. It's very easy to hide behind this phone when no one can speak up or cheer and you can't hear the crowd. So I'd like to know when you plan to meet us in person.
I am doing this teletown hall, which is my 23rd. I did it when Joe Biden was in the White House. I'm doing these when Donald Trump was in the White House. I'm going to go back to your previous thing because what you said was incorrect, because the law has language to allow every state to make accommodations for anyone who has a current name that they weren't born with. But there's this movement across the country where leftist organizations are creating this town hall furor. And no, there's no one chanting over each other, because you and I are talking and there's 5,500 people on the line right now. So everyone can hear what we're having to say, and no one's getting shouted down and everyone's getting their point across. It's a very civil discussion. And as you've heard tonight, I've taken plenty of people that don't agree with my positions, including yourself. They're not screened out, but I had a decision when I came to Congress on how we were going to best communicate. I think we over communicate with our district. We put out a weekly newsletter. Well, you can laugh and whatever, but I'm going to tell you exactly what I do. I have 160.
I get your newsletter.
Okay.
I get your very pointed questions that only lead to one answer. My question is,
I'm actually in the middle of an answer.
You're also saying that there are provisions in that bill that make accommodations. Those accommodations cost money. So what are we going to do about women who are not in a financial situation to go pay for those accommodations? Do the poor not have the right to vote anymore?
The poor don't have a right to their marriage license? Come on. I mean,
no, they don't.
You're trying to.
But the marriage license is not in that bill. It is a passport, a birth certificate, and a driver's license. So if you don't have a passport, you need a birth certificate and a driver's license that match. There is not currently a provision for a marriage license.
There is a provision for the states to allow it. The states who actually administer the voter registration will make the ultimate rules, period. And you're reading something into it. You're reading something into it so that it fits your political narrative. We're preventing people that are non-citizens from voting. I will never back down from that.
There is absolutely no there is no data that
states have the ability to do the marriage license. There are non-citizens that have voted in U.S. elections, period, and one is too many. So we can agree to disagree on that, but American elections are for American citizens.
Do you think it's allowable to keep American citizens from voting to make sure
I don't believe
that not
any
a
American
other
citizen.
Gets to?
I don't believe one American citizen will be prevented from voting.
It's absolutely going to happen. It's written in this bill for that reason. This already affects 63 million women right now without the states making different provisions. It is accurate. You don't have to agree for it to be the truth.
You're a registered voter and nothing is changing. And
it absolutely is. I now have to provide ID when I go to
You don't have to.
Correct?
You have a problem with showing a voter ID.
I already give my name. I already tell them my address. What will they get off of?
You tell them your name.
Now. So I have to provide a passport now.
When you're registering to vote.
Yep. And when
you're currently registered.
My party affiliation.
Okay. I'm going to guess you're probably not going to do that anytime soon. But we're going to agree to disagree on this.
So besides me, new people, young women who are maybe just registering to vote for the first time, if they're adopted and their birth certificate doesn't match their legal name now they have to go pay to have that corrected. There are people besides married women that this affects a great deal.
Okay. I mean, you certainly have, your agenda here, your positions have been
I have an
stated.
educated opinion that you don't like.
And you don't like my voting record. And I've heard you loud and clear. I disagree with you as to what this, well, I'm sure we will. Thank you for calling. But I want to touch on a point without getting interrupted about the town hall furor. There is a leftist movement in this country that has created this hullabaloo around town hall meetings. I decided when I came to Congress on how I was going to communicate with the district, and this method that we're using tonight, and we have plenty of differences of opinion here on the line, allows us to have civil conversation, and you don't have to hire a babysitter, you don't have to travel, you don't have to drive, you don't have to take time off work. You get to hear from your member of Congress in the privacy of your own home. This, in addition to the way we communicate with people through email every single week. You can sign up on our website, langworthy.house.gov, for our weekly email newsletter on what I'm working on in Washington, what votes are coming up in Congress, what's been happening around the country and the world, and we put that information out every single week. I have 4 district offices in Clarence, Corning, Olean, Jamestown, and of course our Washington D.C. office, which many of you call every single day, and you call all the offices. But I represent 160 towns in 9 counties, along with 7 cities. It's a massive piece of territory. We're in session 11 straight months a year. There's very little time to have widespread town hall meetings across the district. If I had one in Elmira, people would say, "Why didn't you have it in Olean? Why didn't you have it in Hamburg?" I mean, there's never going to be a way to satisfy all the people that want to do this. Tonight we called 100,000 people, and you could subscribe to the call. If you press 1 right now, in fact, you can get on this list every single month, and every time we have this, you'll get the call. So press 1 if you want to get these calls every single month, and you'll be subscribed to the list. And if you want to participate, you can, and if you don't, then just let it go to voicemail. But this whole notion that people are going to get in a room and start yelling and screaming and carrying on. It's beneath the dignity of our constituents, because there's people that have legitimate concerns. There's a lot that I've learned from these town hall meetings that we've hosted this 23 times from constituents that have led to legislative fixes or administrative fixes. I mean, this is something that helps me a great deal. Listen to people, and we've gone out of our way tonight, as you could tell, to find people that disagree, because there's allegations out there that we scrub out all the people that disagree with me. That's nothing could be further from the truth. I respect your First Amendment rights, whether you agree with me or not. But I'm going to say this: just because you're yelling doesn't mean that your voice counts any more than people that aren't yelling at all. So we'll leave it at that, and we're going to take another call or two. We're going to go to Christine.
Hello.
Hi, Christine.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, Christine. How are you? Good. How are you? Thanks for taking my call.
Oh, my pleasure. Where are you calling from tonight?
I'm calling from West Valley, that itty-bitty little
okay.
town near Ellicottville.
I know it well.
So I'm calling because in mid-February, I had written an email to you voicing my concerns about the Endangered Species Act. And in your response, you described to me your efforts via H.R. 426 in protecting the lakes from pollution and disruptions in the fragile ecosystem. And I was really encouraged to hear your support for the environment in that. That being said, I am really troubled by the administration's intentions to fast-track the processes for mining and fossil fuel extractions on our public lands. I'm sure that doing this will negatively impact the communities around those lands, as well as the natural beauty and the wildlife of those areas. I would just like to know more about why an energy emergency has been declared and why the public lands have to be further damaged or even destroyed for what really seems like it's just lining the energy sector's pockets. And that's
well, the one thing to understand just how many public lands the United States has. It is a massive amount of territory in this country, especially as you go out west. I mean, it's not something that we have, large deposits of federal lands here in our area, but when you get to the western states, it's massive, and there are a lot of minerals. There's 640 million acres of public land in this country, and that represents like 28% of our total country's land mass. And there are areas that are completely unpopulated. I mean, there's obviously the treasures in our national parks, and those are, very, places of great beauty that many Americans go and visit. But there's also a lot of federal land that we don't really do anything with, and people don't live in. We want a national energy emergency because we were discouraging the production of American energy in the last few years. The need to bring pipelines to, produce American energy to export around the world and to also use here and make us less dependent on foreign sources is very important. We cannot windmill and solar panel our way through, the crisis ahead of us. I mean, the moonshot ahead of us is the race for AI. And China and the United States are currently locked in this moon race as to who is going to be the predominant leader in the world of artificial intelligence. And whoever wins this is going to be the world superpower. And we cannot take energy off the grid. We have to produce more. And we have rare earth minerals that are critical. With all of our technology, they are so important to that. Our national, parks and our, treasured lands like that, I'm all for protecting, but we have an awful lot of territory that is just sitting there vacant and unused. And I do believe that the permitting process in this country across the board is out of control to get something done. And we do need to streamline those processes. Doesn't mean we have to be environmentally irresponsible in order to do it. We should be good stewards of the environment. I believe that about our Great Lakes. That's why I don't want us to see, put a silly vanity project of 50 windmills in Lake Erie, on the other side of Hamburg. It was one of the first pieces of legislation I put forward, which was to pull any federal subsidies for wind projects in the Great Lakes system, because we have this God-given asset of these Great Lakes. It's our water, it's our recreation, it's our identity, and we're going to sully it and bring that pollution back up to the surface if we're boring into the floor of the lake to just put up 50 windmills. It just seems like an asinine venture for what we're actually going to get out of it, to risk the health of the lake and what it means to our communities. But we can, in areas of the country where, you have sparse, if any, population, where you have all this land sitting there, if there are minerals, if there are, energy assets there, if there's a responsible way to harness them, we really should, in my opinion. But it's obviously, something that, I don't know if you agree or not, but I don't think we're going to see, Old Faithful is going to get knocked down to make a fracking well. That's not what we're talking about here. But there is just a vast inventory of lands that are just untouched and underutilized.
Okay.
So
I'm just concerned about.
I understand, and I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. And but we have to be the best stewards of the environment we can, while at the same time not holding our country back in this energy race that we have. Because whoever wins in provide, that's why China is producing a new coal-fired power plant every single month in their country, a brand new electrical plant. We've taken most of ours offline. They're burning the dirtiest coal in the world to create more electricity to fund this AI race, and we're taking plants offline, and no one's talking about nuclear or the other things. I mean, our state won't even allow us to do gas-powered power plants, which I think are critically important. So, that's a little off topic, but it's very critical to why we need more energy on that grid ASAP. So, thank you very much for calling in tonight, Christine. I really appreciate it. And I think we're going to be on to the next caller, which is, hang on, bear with me, we're going to Russ, I think. Hi, is this, I'm sorry, we got to Daniel. Daniel.
Hey, Congressman Langworthy, finally we get to speak. This is my 23rd town hall and my first time getting through the screening. So I'm very
thank you.
excited.
We have hundreds of people waiting to ask questions. Unfortunately, we only get about an hour and change to do these. So, but happy to have you on. What's on your mind?
So I am a veteran and I have a lot of veteran questions, but predominantly I work with Student Veterans of America, which is a wonderful national organization at all the universities and colleges across the United States. And we were just in Washington in March on Capitol Hill. And we were kind of sad that you weren't there to participate in the discussion that was going on.
Were you there while we were in session, or?
Yes, you were there. You were in session. Jared Lyons, our CEO, addressed Congress directly. The joint sessions of the veterans committees for the House of Representatives and for the Senate. The videos on YouTube.
Okay.
So a little disappointing that we weren't unable to connect with you during our time in D.C. But the questions, that I have really are more on the federal level. I understand.
Okay.
We all understand the Department of Education is being, dismantled and shuttered, and that's okay, I guess. But the big question is when it comes down to colleges and universities, how much will the federal government intervene in what these colleges and universities are going to decide is appropriate curriculum? I'm all for states' rights, and I think the states should have the final say in what they teach and what's appropriate. I'm a big fan of that. Yes, the states should be appropriately teaching our young people and our college individuals. Yes, absolutely. But will the federal government intercede in that if the federal government decides that what's being taught is not appropriate? For example, if New York State decides to go ahead and say, hey, we like teaching critical race theory and we like teaching DEI and our voters and our constituents like that, is the federal government going to come in and shut it down and say, no, you can't do that, as the case is kind of with Harvard and having their federal funds frozen, or with Columbia and being forced into bowing to the administration because they want to teach things that the administration doesn't think is appropriate? How will that affect us veterans using federal funds? Will we be able to continue to use our GI Bills at schools that the administration doesn't feel it's teaching the appropriate curriculum? That is the concern right now for us veterans using our GI Bill, whether or not we're going to still be able to use our GI Bill because we're going to a school that the administration says, hey, no, this is not right. And that's the concern. Will I be able to continue my schooling? Will I be able to continue to receive the benefits I earned?
I think I know what you're. Yeah. All right, let me just kind of jump in here because the time is very short. I have heard nothing affecting the GI Bill and where you get to choose to go to school. There's been no discussion of student loan programs or where anyone gets to choose to take their federal loans to go get an education. I think a lot of this discussion is about major grants that are going there and what the purpose of the grants are. We have massive amounts of dollars going to universities, and the administration has laid out the criteria on what federal grants are allowed to go towards, and some of these universities are pushing back. I mean, there's obviously court actions from state's attorney general. I think our attorney general here in New York is going on a DEI fight with the administration, and that'll be sorted out by the courts on what's allowed or not allowed. And with the Department of Education, I have not voted in the past to eliminate the Department of Education, but I have long thought that it is a secondary level that's fairly unnecessary. As long as we federally continue to provide the Title I funding to support our schools, we provide the aid. The federal school lunch program is obviously very important to our district and to districts across the country. The impact federal aid that goes to our Native schools for Native Americans, I mean, those programs can be delivered without a massive bureaucracy around it. I recently sat with the Chautauqua County school superintendents, and it was a very good discussion. And I asked them, how much do you interact with the Federal Department of Education? And but for a transfer of money, which first goes to Albany and then goes to their schools, the answer was none. New York already governs our education in New York enough. We don't need a separate bureaucracy to govern the education of New York. And I think those educational decisions are best at the local level. I may even like it if we had an upstate versus downstate education system, but that's probably never going to happen. But New York is got a very intensive regulation system that we don't need a duplication of federal bureaucracy that isn't really interacting at the district levels. The state education department does plenty of regulating, and we're not seeing that the federal Department of Education creates better outcomes. It's more, the last major federal injection of input was the No Child Left Behind under the Bush years. And that was a kind of a big flop. I mean, no one seemed happy with No Child Left Behind on either side of the equation or political spectrum. So I do think that education is best governed at the state levels. And if we don't need a massive bureaucracy to administer the funding that the federal government needs to deliver to the states to support our school districts, I'm open to at least a very stripped down version of the Department of Education, and perhaps I'm open to the discussion of the total elimination of the department. But those funding sources, the Title I funds, the impact grants, the school lunch programs are important programs, and we need to keep that funding alive and well. I don't believe there's any, Danielle, I want to thank you for your service. I've heard of no discussion about changes to allowing the GI Bill in educational decisions or any student loan program for that matter. So I thank you for being with us.
I have to interrupt
Go ahead.
you just briefly. I know you say you haven't heard of any issues with veteran benefits or GI benefits or anything like that. However, our organization, we actually won the lawsuit at the Supreme Court level in April of last year. So you could look at the Supreme Court
April of last year?
April of last year, Student Veterans of America versus the Veterans Affairs. And we won that lawsuit to restore our GI benefits to individuals that earned their GI benefits, that had those VA benefits stripped from them under the Trump administration. So we're really happy about the work that we're doing to restore benefits to veterans. We are really excited about the work that we do to advocate for veterans.
Okay.
But we're really disappointed when we don't get the support from our legislators when we say, hey, this is
that
not
wasn't
right.
the question you just asked me. The question you just asked me is the federal government going to decide where you can go to school? So don't change the question in the middle of my
Absolutely.
answer.
Decide
so
where are we going to go to school? But the question also was what's going to happen to our benefits, because we've had our benefits stripped and we had to sue to get those benefits back. For example, I'm one of those people that got benefits back after the lawsuit because I served and I earned the Montgomery GI Bill, and then I served some more, and I earned post 9/11. And the VA said, sorry, you only get post 9/11. You've lost your Montgomery. And so the lawsuit came up and went to the Supreme Court, and I got Montgomery back, but that was under the Trump administration. And again, it's the federal government interfering with where I get to go to school, how I get to use the funds that I've earned. And I just want to make sure that that's safeguarded for my future, for other veterans' futures, because that's a big thing that's going to help retain our military, make our military strong, is how our veterans are treated. We'll make sure that our veterans if they're treated well, guess what? People are going to want to join the service because they're going to be like, hey, I'm going to be okay if something happens to me. And that's kind of like,
we're
going
to protect the GI Bill. We increased our troops' pay. There's going to be a continued treasuring of our nation's veterans. And again, your original question was DEI going to affect your GI Bill, and it wasn't about anything that you just brought up to me, which was not germane to what we were talking about with the Department of Education. So, Daniel, we're out of time. I thank you for being with me tonight. We're going to take. We've got Ron on the line. This is the last call of the night. Ron?
Hello.
Hello, Ron.
How you doing?
Doing great. What's on your mind?
Yes. I was wondering, why are they having such a fit about deporting these illegal aliens, but they didn't have a problem with Biden letting millions of men killing our women, molesting and killing our children, trafficking everybody, and bringing drugs in?
Well, that's what we've been working on all year with the sealing our border, getting the criminal illegal immigrants out of this country. The deportations have been continual. We spent a lot of time this year with ICE in Buffalo in order to talk about the work that they're doing and supporting their efforts, because we have a criminal element that's come into this country. I mean, we have as many as 20 million people that snuck into this country the last 4 years, and the country is less safe because of it. It is truly the greatest invasion we've seen in our country's history. And our ICE and our U.S. Border Patrol has done an incredible job working to get the worst of the worst out of this country. They should have never been in this country. A country has to have borders, and we are working within the budget reconciliation to provide more funding and resources for those Border Patrol agents so they can continue that mission, so we can finish the wall on the southern border, and this never happens again. So I want to thank you all. We're in deep overtime here for being with us tonight. This has been a great conversation. We've had people of all affiliations represented on the line, and that's what democracy is all about. We've heard from people across the spectrum, and sometimes we agree to disagree, but you've been heard. I want to thank you for taking time to be with me tonight, to hear all the important updates, and for me to share the top issues and to listen to what's on your mind. We have a lot of big challenges ahead to tackle for both our nation and our region, and I'm honored to work towards solutions that will help the residents, the taxpayers, the families, the businesses of Western New York and the Southern Tier. Please know that our office is always open to you. If you have questions, concerns, you need help, you have comments, you need assistance from the federal government. If we weren't able to answer your question tonight, you can stay on the line. After this call, you can leave a voicemail for myself and my staff. And I want to thank you for joining us tonight again. Have a great rest of your night. God bless you and your families, and God bless America.